everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week. Happy Sunday. Hopefully you guys are doing well. This is going to be the preview for the Astrology of August 2023. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer. I focus both on working with the tarot as well as the Sabian symbols to understand what's going on in the cosmos. If you like my work and you want to see more, please click the button below and subscribe so you're alerted as to when we have new videos coming out on the channel. Drop me a message and say hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from and give me a thumbs up if you like the content. And to those of you guys who are part of the Sunday crew, happy Sunday. I hope your weekend is going well. Maybe you guys saw the horoscopes. I don't know. If you saw them, some of the stuff you guys might have heard, but I did want to go a little bit more in depth to some of the transits taking place in August. We're going to kind of go transit by transit throughout the month and take a peek. A lot is going on, so if you guys want to grab your chart or a cup of tea or a notebook and some markers or whatever it is you guys take your notes with, now's a good time to do that. Just touching on some of the themes before we even jump into the chart. Just as a reminder, Pluto is going to continue squaring the nodes this month, so we are going to be feeling that pressure to really evolve on a soul level, really being asked to kind of like face the shadow, right? Doing shadow work, reevaluating power struggles in our life, reevaluating our responsibility out in the world, because it is in the sign of Capricorn. And when planets square the nodal axis, we feel the pressure to integrate that planet. So Pluto is here to help us kind of shed all of those old layers of ourselves. It's here to help us detox, clear, cleanse, purge. For some of us, it does feel like a crisis moment. We've been really feeling that since the sun in the late degrees of Cancer just this last month in July. We will continue to be feeling this all month long. And as the nodes get closer to about 27 degrees, that pressure is going to start to release later in the month. So that's something to look forward to. But nevertheless, I encourage you guys to really show up and be willing to make change happen. Even if it's painful, even if it's scary, it's an opportunity for us to be able to collectively move from the past, South Node in Libra, where we have made sacrifices on a personal level for other people. Maybe there's been people-pleasing issues. Maybe there's been some relationship karma that we're working through. Maybe there's been some imbalances to better integrate the North Node in Aries, which is all going to be about our passions, our desire, our independence, and our instinctual knowing that in order for us to get to where we want to go, we have to actually be in the driver's seat of our own lives. So that pressure will kind of hang around. Just so you guys know, Pluto will continue to keep going in and out of Capricorn until the end of 2024. So we're not going to see as many aspects as we've seen in this last month. That's really pressuring us to kind of step into clearing out the decks wherever Capricorn is in your chart. So if you take a look at which house that is in, since 2008, Pluto has been kind of just kicking ass and taking names in that department. And yeah, I think it's a really amazing opportunity, not only to work with the square, but throughout this month, we're going to see a number of planets in a sister sign going through the sign of Virgo. So we will be experiencing some Earth trines between Mercury and Mars in Virgo, to Pluto, to Uranus, to Jupiter in Taurus. So we're going to see Earth trines that are going to be taking place, allowing us to make physical change happen, financial change happen, job change happen, and really kind of get things in order. So that's something that you guys want to work with. We also have an extra full moon this month. So we're going to be actually having the month kick off with a full moon in Aquarius. We're going to have a new moon, which is quite chaotic in the sign of Leo. And then at the end of the month, it's going to be wrapping up with a full moon in Pisces, which will be conjunct Saturn. So I'll be briefly touching on those today. And the Venus retrograde still kind of rolls on. We're going to see a Cazimi point take place where Venus will come into a superior conjunction with the sun likely illuminating what we're reworking when it comes to our love lives, our values, our personal style. Definitely seeing it out in the world. We've seen all this hype revolving around the Barbie movie. We've got Twitter's rebrand to, X. And I anticipate we're going to see some more kind of things revolving around this kind of shadow side of Venus that's kind of getting worked out throughout the retrograde. And then Mercury will also be turning retrograde this month as well. So as a reminder, very early in the month, we're going to be entering shadow. So as that happens, you're going to be feeling kind of the bumps of this particular Mercury retrograde that will be coming in later in the month. If you're new to my channel, essentially, we do a monthly in advance. We take a look at what's going on collectively, very generally. But if you want something that's more personalized, check out my August 2023 horoscopes for each of the 12 rising signs. I touch on a lot of these transits and let you know how it might be playing out in your own personal life. And then we'll be back here throughout, the next couple of weeks, every Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, kind of breaking some of this stuff down, going deeper. We do have a Mercury in Virgo video that's already out. I do touch on the retrograde, so if you haven't seen it, check it out because I show you all of the different transits and what to expect. And we also are going to be doing the new and full moons as well, so stay tuned for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to start with the very first day of August. Obviously, we're going to be having this full moon in Aquarius. So right off the bat, the energy is pretty sky high. We have generally a full moon every 28 days. This month we got extra lucky. So we have one that's like kind of bookending on the first and like around the last day of the month. Extra full moon of the month, maybe a little extra, climactic. I think that we could definitely see that there can be lots of conclusions, big energies, big shifts, big changes taking place with these lunations. We've got the moon in the weird, wacky, rebellious, spontaneous, freedom-loving sign of Aquarius. And what's really interesting is that in this particular sign, we are going to be seeing lots of themes revolving around Uranus, right? And so Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. Still seeing lots of action there with Jupiter in the same sign where we're seeing energies ramping up towards our collective future, what's physically changing in our future when it comes to Taurus related things. So innovation when it comes to banking, when it comes to food, resources, the earth, the environment. And we do have the moon that by sign is in a square, okay? So as if the opposition between the full moon and two fixed signs wasn't enough, that energy that we're going to be picking up actually on the back end of the full moon is going to be quite intense because the moon will start coming into a square with Jupiter where it's going to really enhance and highlight the effects of the full moon. And then we're going to see the moon come into a square with Uranus. There is a video on the channel about the full moon in Aquarius. Make sure you don't miss it. But this is definitely a full moon that is going to be felt up to like 2 days, after the actual exact opposition. Now on this day, we're also going to see Mars in Virgo trine Jupiter in Taurus. So kind of an important transit, especially now that Mars is kind of leading the way for all of us collectively. Because we have this new North Node. Now the North Node is in the sign of Aries, ruled by Mars. So to really work with this nodal change, we want to be really taking a look at what is the condition of Mars. Is Mars in a sign where it's comfortable? How is it communicating with other planets? And Mars is moving through Virgo, so it's taking action. Mars revolving around organization, health, in many ways being of service, organizing things, perfecting things, kind of getting down and dirty because Mars wants to, it's kind of like linear. It wants to get something done. It wants to accomplish something. And Virgo wants to have a sense of purpose. So what I like about the Mars in Virgo transit is, at least for me, it's felt very productive. Like there's been this ongoing like to-do list, and I actually feel like I'm really getting some of these things done. and doing it consistently. And there is always a method with Virgo. So when we see Mars come into a harmonious trine, right, with Jupiter, Jupiter expands. In the sign of Taurus, it's abundant. So we see more money, more opportunity for better self-esteem. There can be more growth that can be taking place. And we can also see things suddenly kind of speed up, because Mars can be about speed. So one thing I like about this full moon is that the actions revolving around the Virgo area of your chart, the actions you're taking place or taking part in, is going to likely produce some kind of abundance, some kind of positive physical change. And it does require us to have some courage, right? Mars is about courage. It's about standing up, getting something done. It's about what's worth fighting for. That's really what I think about this transit in the sign of Virgo, is being able to really figure out, okay, what's worth fighting for? What is going to actually produce or yield the best results? So actions that are taken under this trine, give or take a day around the full moon, are likely going to have some pretty significant and beneficial results. Unfortunately, the very same day, we're going to see Mercury in Virgo oppose Saturn in Pisces. So a little bit of sweet and salty aspects. Maybe you guys remember when Mars was in opposition to Saturn and we felt like we really wanted to jump into something, but we knew it was going to take more time. Well, you're going to see something similar. Mercury opposed Saturn definitely can be, I think, getting down on ourselves. It can be about us wanting to have, better schedules, healthier habits, more structure, more productivity. But the opposition to Saturn in a Neptunian sign is saying, like, okay, I don't see the vision yet. I don't see the purpose. I don't really know entirely where I'm going. And Saturn is retrograde, so there is a sense of needing to reevaluate are our daily routines, our habits, our jobs in alignment also with our emotions, right? Are we just going through the motions, Virgo, doing the busy work and not getting enough sleep, not taking into consideration our emotions? Are we getting enough time to rest and recuperate? And Mercury-Saturn oppositions can flat out be somebody telling you, no, not today, I'm not ready, I'm not picking up the phone. So be mindful that this is not the best day for having serious conversations, for business arrangements, negotiations, signing contracts. Any of that stuff is definitely going to feel the effects of Saturn slowing down or taking some space to overthink something. In the background also, in just a couple of days, Mercury will be entering into shadow, and that's going to be starting on the 3rd of August, as soon as Mercury hits around 8 degrees, okay? Oops. Sorry, guys. Let me make this Aries rising. I guess I forgot to set that. Whoops. But yeah, right around the time Mercury hits about 8 degrees, there we go. We are going to be in the shadow. So that'll be the PM hours of the 3rd. And essentially the shadow is just when a planet enters into the degrees which it will retrograde through. So this particular retrograde, even though it's not going to be starting until the 22nd of August, will be between 8 and 21 degrees of Virgo. So you want to take a look at your chart. You want to see, do I have any planets within those degrees? Sun, moon, rising, but also, is that your natal Mercury? Is that your natal Venus? Is it a node? That means that if you have anything between those degrees, what's going to happen is Mercury is going to hit that particular point several times through the retrograde process. So you might have to take a little bit longer when it comes to the theme of that planet or the theme of that house to work something out, right? Retrograde means to review, to go back, to revise, and rethink, essentially. I really like the Mercury retrograde. I've said this several times. I'm not somebody who buys into the pop astrology that retrogrades are horrible. I think retrogrades give us the opportunity to kind of like clean out all of the cobwebs, especially things that we need to talk about, things that have gone missing, generally come up during retrogrades. And so Mercury being in its home sign definitely gives it a little bit more oomph. And once we get out of the kind of challenging Mercury-Saturn opposition, thankfully, all of the retrograde is actually going to be between Saturn and also Neptune. So it's going to be in that sweet spot degree-wise where it's going to be making several trines to Jupiter. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but just know on the 3rd, that's when Mercury is going to be entering shadow, and we're going to begin to kind of see where there can be some glitches with technology. We can start to see the communication breakdown. You know, cars can sometimes act up. We can drop phone calls. Emails go missing. We can have miscommunications. So it's definitely going to be something that is going to be felt wholeheartedly, especially in this sign. But the benefit is, I think, that we have the opportunity with this retrograde to really rework something in regards to our habits, our work schedule, our office space, anything in regards to our health, right? Because we do have Mercury that's going to be in its domicile. My advice is that if you're kind of like an astro nerd, or if you're really strict and particular about the shadow and you're like, hey, I don't want to do anything, get your stuff done prior to the 3rd of August. Hopefully this is giving you guys a little bit of time before you get to that point if you need to get some stuff in order. If not, then know that, you know, the trine that we're going to see on the 9th between Mercury and Jupiter is still pretty good. So I would almost encourage people actually maybe to wait around until about the 9th or the 10th and see that trine and see what manifests from that, and what bright idea or exciting piece of information comes through. You can rework that throughout the retrograde. I know that's what I'm going to be doing. So don't treat all retrogrades the same. If you've got a really sweet aspect you're going to see a couple times, might be worth actually holding off and waiting and seeing what you can do with it. All right, so Mercury hits shadow on the 3rd. I want to take you guys now to the 6th of the month. And on the 6th, this is when we are going to see the Sun in Leo square Jupiter in Taurus. And it's in a Taurus degree, okay? Couple people have asked me recently, what does it mean when you say the degrees? Essentially, if 1 degree is Aries and 12 degrees is Pisces, right? Because it represents the 12th house. Then 13 degrees is Aries, right? And then 24 degrees is Pisces. You get what I'm saying? So every 12 degrees, it will correlate and relate to one of the zodiac signs. And you can take it all the way up essentially to 29, which would be Leo. Anyway, if you wonder how any of that stuff works, look at Degree Astrology or consider taking my beginner's astro course, because that's how I practice astrology. It gives you like an extra layer. But because this is 14 degrees, right, which is Taurus, the square is going to have a little bit of like a Taurus flair. Now, when we have the sun in its ruling sign, it's strong. The sun in Leo is proud, it's bold, it's creative. In the sign of youth and, artists and designers, and it's about our expression out in the world. It is challenging Jupiter, and Jupiter is about laws, it's about ethics, it's about morals. It can also be about the expansion of Taurus-related things: farmers, agriculture, banks, resources, self-esteem, food. So individuals, right, are challenging something revolving around these particular groups. I do think this is also going to be more about stuff that's going on in the entertainment industry, and where entertainers are kind of pushing for stronger rules revolving around the future of their occupations, whether that's like AI, right, because Uranus is in this sign, whether this is individuals that are putting pressure on financial systems. Really interesting, just something I've been kind of like watching throughout Twitter, or I guess now it's X with the rebrand. I just randomly saw this, was not looking for it, but saw hashtag cancel Chase was coming up, and I was like, what's this about? Seeing that there have been a number of people in particular connected to like a holistic medical group who have been really boastful, talking about their perspectives on healthcare and the pharmaceutical companies, and trying to advocate for like health and wellness and like natural treatments. Who, after 18 years of being a member of Chase Bank, was canceled. He was canceled, his spouse was canceled, all of his employees were canceled, and just like got a letter from Chase basically saying like they were being debanked. Anyway, so he went public with this and was explaining how it was affecting not just him, but his employees and their families. And it kind of like really picked up momentum. And so in my mind, this can be like where individuals, Leo, are challenging some of the control of some of these larger banks, Jupiter and Taurus. And Venus is retrograde in Leo, so a lot of people are reevaluating their personal values. Have heard a number of people who I've been speaking to, friends, relatives, whatever, who have been like, yeah, I'm considering, making a change with where I'm banking or my trading platforms because they're having issues with some of the trades. So the fifth house, Leo, can also be about the stock market, okay? So I do think that something about the Jupiter Sun square most likely will materialize as a day where we're just seeing larger than life experiences that are going to be going on, revolving around, just exchange and the banking system. I do feel like it can be where individuals are starting to kind of become more aware of their involvement and the fact that like we choose where we bank, where we put our resources, we choose where we spend our money. And I think people might be starting to feel a little bit more empowered by some of the decisions that they're going to be potentially making, whether that's where you're shopping and buying stuff or where you're keeping money in certain accounts, with what companies you're deciding to bank with, what companies you're deciding to trade with. This can also be a day where we are overly enthusiastic, optimistic, right? Jupiter can be about all of the positive things. It can be about wealth, especially in this sign. And so as we're seeing the sun that's squaring, we're going to be really feeling this push to be like, we want more. How can we have more? How can we create, Leo, more? And so it can also be a day where people are feeling just like a little bit more extra enthusiastic also about romance, creativity, performances. It does make me feel like there can be a tendency to be too optimistic about things that might be going on financially. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Still not a bad transit though. I'm not disappointed with that. It's just a day where we might indulge a little too much, Okay, so then on the 9th of the month, we're going to be seeing Venus return to the second square with Uranus. So this is the day that you guys really want to watch because now that South Node in Libra is ruled by Venus. So when Venus forms squares, oppositions, conjunctions, in a way it's reverberating from that South Node in Libra where it's like, oh, this isn't fair. This isn't as balanced, or this relationship is breaking apart, or this dynamic is not working any longer. Because where the South Node is talking about what we're acknowledging and we're consciously not moving away from, but deciding to kind of like release if that's what's going to serve us best. So we can activate the North Node. Well, we've got some cool stuff going on here. Sextile to the South Node is enhancing the likelihood of being able to let go of this old conflict in relationships, old issues with like previous lovers in the sign of Leo, childhood issues, emotional heart-centered blocks. But still, the square to Uranus is where we feel like we need to shake things up. We need something different. Might be a day where you're opting for like a weirder or a wackier pattern. We might find that our values don't particularly align with other people's. And this is going to be in a degree that's associated with Capricorn. So 22 is going to be about old structures. It could be about things in regards to, governments, especially spending. I think that's going to be something that's going to come up, is how much money is being allocated towards, certain departments, and like, why is it going to those departments, and why is so much money being spent on certain things? I do feel like this is also going to be really bringing up for a lot of people where something is needing to change in regards to their spending habits, where the second house is the money that we possess. The fifth house talks about, taking chances. And so some people might be kind of realizing, wow, I've been a little too spend happy. I haven't been sticking to a budget. Maybe I've been buying things, feeling like that was going to kind of replace something that I really needed emotionally. So there can be some reflecting on emotional spending that's happening. This is the second square that has happened between these two planets. Let's see, it's the 9th. Okay, I'll come back to this. The last time that we had this square, it was happening at 21 degrees, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so the last time we had this square was like right around July 1st. So you want to think of like the 1st or the 2nd of July. What was going on then? Where was there some like overindulgence? Where was some restlessness going on in a relationship? Where was there a change in your preferences or a change in regards to your relationships with other people? Now, was a different degree, okay? So now this time around, it's going to be in a Capricorn degree. So I do think that even though you may see almost like a deja vu where you're like, wait, are we really having this problem again? Or like, are we really having this argument again? Or like, why is this coming back up for review? It's going to be in a degree that's going to be about long-standing decisions. So you may kind of feel like you're maybe at a crossroads, right? Because the square puts pressure on you to actually actively make a change. What's interesting is that the Sun and Venus are getting very close to each other. So as we're seeing like the Sun and Venus come together, the Sun square Uranus is going to actually start taking place. So then we're going to see right around that time that the changes are going to be implemented. But watch for the restlessness in relationships. I definitely feel like this can be a period where a lot of people are questioning and asking themselves, like, is this sustainable, the way that I am with my resources or with my job or with a relationship, and what potentially is needing to be kind of reworked. Very same day, we're going to see Mercury in Virgo trine Jupiter in Taurus. And so this is that day that I was telling you guys about in the shadow that I was like, okay, there could be something that's setting up that's like an opportunity. If Mercury is the messenger and it's bringing you some piece of advice or an opportunity to connect, communicate, do business, or travel, and it's connecting with a planet that's about positivity, growth, and abundance, even in spite of the square, it's like, okay, how can we talk our way through it? How can we negotiate? How can we turn this into a positive? Okay, so, the relationship may be ending, but is it actually what's best for both parties? Are you in a situation where maybe seeking the advice of, a professional, right? All these planets in Virgo make me feel like people would benefit by going and talking to a financial advisor or deciding to meet with a therapist or going and working with a dietitian or, a physical trainer. If you are experiencing some either financial or relationship-oriented issues, find somebody who can help, who can give you good advice and turn it into an opportunity for growth. And it could be, an opportunity to kind of like learn. In transits, I've seen many times with clients, if they've got transiting Uranus square their natal Venus, they get kind of squirrely, they get kind of restless, and they can kind of start questioning whether or not, okay, can I stay at this job for another so many years, or am I starting to kind of fall out of love with like a partner? So for all of us collectively experiencing this square several times, we get a little snippet of that. And retrogrades come through and oftentimes bring reversals. So if this retrograde square, the second time around, is bringing up some of that same restlessness, I encourage you guys really to sit and reflect with it all week long and go like, okay, is it within me? Am I the problem? Am I needing to give myself more time to create, to have fun, to play? I think a lot of people will be surprised to kind of realize that that may be the missing piece, that there is almost like this lack of creating for the sake of creating, not because there is some, financial end goal or there is something that you have to actually produce or there has to be like an agenda. And this is coming from somebody who's got, some of these squares. I have a stellium of planets in my second house and my north nodes in my fifth. And something I learned while Saturn was going through Aquarius is that all the squares to my second house was teaching me like, go and do things for the sake of having fun, for being creative, for creating something and developing something, and like don't make it be about the end result. And what I found throughout that 3-year transit was that the things that brought the most fulfillment for me on a personal level, there was no financial end result like connected to it. It was just like, I'm going to do this thing. And those were the things that were the most successful for me personally. So from my experience, I guess what I'm relating to you is take the time to be creative. Take the time to spend time with your kids, to go and do the knitting class, or to bake the cake, or to learn about a new hobby or something just for the hell of it. And you may be surprised how that brings you back into your body, right? Taurus, how it helps kind of ground you. Get off the screens. This is the month that you guys want to be doing that. Mercury in Virgo is about productivity. Saturn retrograde in Pisces is going to be about like the doom scrolling, the endless kind of looking into an app, the never kind of getting off of the iPad or the laptop or the television. Virgo is an earth sign. It is all about nature, as is Taurus. So if you guys can physically do something this month, or develop a routine, or be more kind of tapped in when you're doing your everyday kind of routine or chores around the house, you are going to feel a whole lot better. And there are ways while we have a retrograde in Virgo, because it's looking back at Leo, to integrate more fun into our everyday life. And I think it's going to give everybody like a really kind of nice break, to be really honest with you. So watch for that opportunity where the sweetness starts to come in, and perhaps maybe those of you guys who are tapped in with that trine are going to have some kind of insight, or somebody's going to give you like some sagely advice about how to be healthier. They might recommend a book. They might recommend like a YouTube channel, or they might say to you, oh, this might be a great money saving opportunity, or this might potentially be a good investment. Although with Venus square Uranus, be careful with whose advice you buy. All right, so then we take this to the 13th of the month, and that is when we're going to see the Sun and Venus conjunct. Okay, so this is going to be taking place at 20 degrees. Check your chart. Do you have anything around 20 degrees of Leo? Let me know if you do. I'd love to hear. Looks like it's going to happen very early in the morning, but the Cazimi will kind of be in play most of the day. This is going to be the halfway point through the Venus retrograde. So we know that Venus has been going retrograde, reevaluating what we love, what we value, maybe making some changes in our style, maybe making some changes also in our relationships. And it is in a personal sign. So Leo can be about the love that we give ourselves. So much of this is about getting in touch with that inner child, getting in touch with that inner artist, and finding ways to be able to reconnect and reimagine. I love this transit in general for returning to the things that make us happy. It can make us very reminiscent of our childhood. I've seen some like really cool things that have popped up, just social media, and like, some stuff that people have been posting, some friends that are talking about, like pulling out their old PlayStation and playing with their kids, or playing like old board games. It can be about, people making an effort to like go to theme parks and just doing things that they have not done since they were younger. So it's been kind of cool to see that play out. But the retrograde is about the past, okay? So likely if you don't already know what your Venus retrograde transit is about, this might be the day that gives you that insight. The superior conjunction is when a planet retrogrades in conjunction to the sun. So it pulls ahead of the sun. It can be in a way about like Venus dying and being reborn. Okay, that's one way to look at it. And you'll see this also with Mercury as well. But this particular transit makes me feel like this is when we let that thing go, or we finally decide to kind of like emotionally bury and like mourn the relationship that ended or the friendship that ended. It can also be really significant in regards to a woman in our lives, in regards to a financial matter. I don't like saying this, but I do speculate that this might be yet another really significant celebrity death. I think that that is possible. We may not see this come through until like the moon activates it within a couple of days and we have that new moon, but I definitely think that this is possible. Especially considering the Cazimi point at 20 degrees is a degree that relates to Scorpio. So death, rebirth, mourning. It can also be about things that are sexual in nature or very taboo. The sun is bright, right? So it shines a light on something. And Venus is the dispositor of Jupiter and Uranus, which basically means something about this Cazimi and something that's getting ready to be revealed directly connects to Taurus related things. Is this going to be the death of a significant, performer or somebody in Hollywood as a result of information they have or their ties or their awareness of what's been going on with child trafficking in Hollywood? Perhaps. Can it also be some significant piece of art or film or something that's being put out that generates a lot of money? Perhaps. I wonder if this is also potentially going to be connected to somebody going through a personal like rebirth or rebranding, some significant transformation that they may debut like on stage in some way. Still could be kind of scandalous. And, just recently, I think yesterday, so I'm filming this a couple days before Sunday. What is it? Her name is Sinead O'Connor, just passed. Was looking at her transits. I wonder if that's what it's connected to and if there's more information that's going to come about that. But to me, it seems a little early. So I'm wondering if there's going to be yet, someone else. We'll see. I keep questioning, like, is something else going to happen to Madonna? And I've been looking at a couple charts, but I don't want to speculate. But this is definitely going to be a transit that I think is going to bring something up. Now, for you, look at your chart, look at where Leo is, that particular house, right? So you need to know the theme of the house. That particular house is where you might see something significant that's brought back to you. Now, retrogrades can be challenging because the energy is kind of wonky and it's hard to work with, but Venus is a positive planet. It's a benefic. So with Venus retrograding conjunct the sun, is there an ending of one thing that makes way for a beginning? Perhaps. Is there a reunion? Yeah, that could happen as well. So this could be the day that you hear from the ex. This could be the day that you reconnect with something or someone which you really loved. And I do think that a lot of this square is going to be about our values and, how something that's brought back to us or us reconnecting with something maybe from our childhood makes us realize like, wow, this is really, really valuable. Interesting transit on this particular day. Obviously, if you are like a Leo, sun, moon, or rising, pretty significant for you because it can indicate a period where there is like a pretty big transformation. And especially in regards to maybe like your appearance or maybe even your career. Those of you guys who are Venus ruled, so, Taurus rising, Libra rising, I'd be paying attention on this day as well. For Taurus, it can be about a reunion with home and family. And for Libra, it can be about a reevaluation of a friendship. For some Libras, it can be a relationship ending, making way for a new beginning. So go and read your horoscopes for that, but definitely more so prominent maybe for some of those signs. And still, the Venus-Uranus square is reverberating out there. So in a way, it's like this can be as a result of the Venus-Uranus square just a couple days prior, right? All right, so then on the 15th of the month, we are going to see Sun in Leo square Uranus and Taurus, so many damn squares. So unlike the Sun square Jupiter that was like, yeah, let's overdo it. Like, give me all the ice cream sundaes and let's go and spend all the monies at the arcade. This is a little different. The Sun square Uranus is a anything goes day. This is where something kind of breaks down. This is where we see that, people change their direction. Uranus is kind of like the rebel with a cause, right? So it's shaking up things financially. And the Sun square with the Sun in its domicile tells me that This is where individuals are reacting to physical changes. They're reacting to changes in the banking system, the financial changes and things that are going on in the world. Still at a 22, okay? So that's interesting because we're still seeing stuff ricocheting relating to a degree that deals with government and people who are in charge and big business and, like regulation even. I could definitely see that being a theme revolving around Capricorn. So is there a sense of new regulations that are starting to come in connection to, banking or cryptocurrencies? I definitely think this could be a huge theme. And obviously it's going to be right before we're seeing that new moon in Leo show up. So this will be a couple day period to watch. We will be seeing that new moon come in on what is it going to be? On the take that back. It'll be on the 16th. So it'll be the next day. But this is what we would call like the dark moon. Okay, so the moon is really, coming into that new moon conjunction. And when we have the new moon, you're going to see the moon square Jupiter. So it's going to be enhancing, like, oh, this thing is closing out, this thing is breaking down. Then you're going to see the moon square Uranus and conjunct Venus. So there is going to be some kind of reaction to something that's going on out in the world relating to Leo. I'm watching to see what's going to happen with some of these strikes revolving around, the writers and the actors. And then I think the real challenge is actually going to be potentially stuff revolving around the Teamsters. And whether that's like the unions that are responsible for doing all of like the work on set and like the truck drivers and all of that stuff, but also how that correlates to people who are also like transporting goods and food and like other products. So much of the Mercury retrograde, I do believe, unfortunately, is going to be more layoffs, and we're going to start to see that there is a real breakdown of business, right? So business is Mercury, but in the sign of Virgo, it's going to be like the helpers. So the people on set, anything in regards to health, healthcare, the service industry. And I've talked at length about how when this retrograde happens and it's all trining Uranus, this is where those who are also connected to Hollywood and the industry are also probably going to be getting involved in collaborating with some of these unions, because they realize that if we do have a loss, right, of these particular, creative endeavors of this field, it's going to have like a trickle effect. And I don't think people really realize, because I've heard a lot of people be like, I don't really care about, the Hollywood strikes, it doesn't matter. But you should care, because part of the reason why they're striking is not only because they want to make sure they're getting residuals from some of these streaming platforms, because you have older shows that are going to be streaming and they want to make sure that they're going to get paid for it. But equally, they're striking because some of them have concerns revolving around AI. There are a number of companies that are involved in developing these technologies that are going to potentially be scanning and wanting to keep almost like a on record, like screening of these actors so they can use them in the future. I know a lot of what I'm saying is crazy, but imagine a future where they have a screened image of, let's say, Tom Cruise, right? And you may be able to jump on a platform in the future and go, I want to watch an action movie, I want it to be with Tom Cruise, and I want this to be the plot. And then AI is able to generate a movie and put that all together. The question is does Tom Cruise get paid for that movie, right? Because he didn't act in it, but it's still him. And they've almost like have the capabilities of being able to immortalize these actors forever, which is an issue because what if they don't want to participate in certain films, but they don't own rights to their face has been scanned by some of these companies. Those very companies are also in cahoots with major governments who are also starting to do research into being able to scan faces to keep them on file and potentially use for surveillance. which could mean there could be a time in the future where you're driving down the street, you go over the speed limit, and there's a camera that scans your face and then immediately sends you a ticket. Similar technology, okay? So I know this stuff sounds crazy, but my point is, if they potentially strike now and start writing into contracts and start affecting the rules and regulations revolving around these technologies, they may potentially be able to preserve some of these particular jobs. Now, it's not just actors, but also what about people who are writing TV shows, writing movies? We already see that there are some major magazines and newspapers that are entertaining the idea of using AI for writing like actual columns and like all kinds of like, you know, journalist related jobs. So if we have actors that aren't acting that are being generated, if we have AI that's creating scripts, then we're not going to have actors. We're not necessarily going to need directors because, you know, who's going to be directing things or writing things? So then why are we going to need people who are going to be on set, and why are we going to be needing Teamsters and other people? It is going to have a trickle-down effect. And unfortunately, I remember talking about this in my Uranus webinar that I think I did like almost a year now. I said during this Mars North Node Uranus conjunction that we had in the summer of 2022, that conjunction was going to be the very beginning of the end of a number of industries, not just the service industry, like getting drinks and food, but also I think it is affecting healthcare. I think we're also going to see it affect potentially even certain like police forces. And now apparently it's affecting actors, which goes to prove my theory that actually I think Virgo has a lot more to do with actors than Leo does. Now, why is this all coming up now? Well, it's still about performances, it's about art. And Venus has been in a square to Uranus, which means there is something that's being reworked revolving around the creative process, and it is affecting unions. It's also coming down to money and technology. So I anticipate that this might go a little bit longer, and rightfully so. I know that it's difficult because people are out of work, and you might say, well, I don't care about Hollywood, but you should, because potentially this is going to affect everybody down the road if we don't start talking about these issues now, because who knows what else this is going to affect. I think that in some ways this is already, I mean, like the snowball has already started. It's just a matter of how we can start talking about this more and implementing more in regards to regulations, so that way it's not potentially affecting, you know, other industries. I don't know, we'll see. All right, so on the 15th, you'll see that square. Watch for anything goes type of energy. It can definitely be very overwhelming. And you're going to see some people who are just going to want to go their own way and not be told what to do. Now, this energy is going to continue because we're going to see then the moon come into conjunction with Venus. And that's going to be on the 15th. Late in the evening. And then we're going to see the moon square Uranus with this new moon. So we're going to have on the 16th a new moon in Leo. And this is obviously ruled by the sun, and the sun is in a square to Uranus now at 23. Wowzers. This is quite dramatic, if you ask me. You know, first of all, the fixed signs, they don't want to change, okay? They like to carry that energy. And the sun is very strong in Leo. So this is loud and bold, and this is what I think, and standing up and doing its thing. We also see that the squares to Uranus are indicating that there is going to be a 28-day cycle from new moon to the next new moon, which will be in Virgo, where there is dramatic change that's going on, right? That's it's affecting the masses. It's at a Uranus degree, 23. Whew. I think that when I look at this, what really piques my interest is yet again the fact that we do see Leo is the focal point with this extended in conjunction between Pluto and Neptune. So it is basically saying those who get loud, creative, the people who stand up, maybe they get a little boastful, maybe they cause a little bit of like a ruckus, right? are likely going to be the people who are going to get all the attention necessary to be able to expose some of the shadowness with Neptune and some of the corruption with Pluto. Like, I'm very curious which artists it's going to be, which performers it's going to be, who this badass woman is going to be that's going to show up and start talking about things and really discussing what needs to be changing within the entertainment world, and not going along with, the agenda, so to say. We're picking up still a lot of energy with the South Node, and so I do feel like what we're going to be feeling with this new moon is the fact that we have to kind of break free, right? We have to break free, and we can't be feeling like we have to be slaves to old relationships or making people happy or, just saying yes because we don't want to rock the boat. Quite literally, this is also about breaking free from financial expectations. And so a lot of this makes me feel like it's also going to be about, people who have been paid to push certain agendas or certain narratives, people who are in the entertainment world, younger people, stars basically is Leo. Just heard recently, apparently, and this is in the news, I guess it was LeBron James's son was rushed into the hospital for having heart problems, right? And so Leo is younger people. It does deal with things revolving around the heart space. And then the square to Uranus can be about the effects on the body and stress, especially in regards to the nervous system. And so I do feel like there is likely going to be some really significant news that's coming out with some of these squares revolving around younger people and the effects that they're having in regards to their heart health. Venus retrograde, Venus at 18 degrees, which is known as a Virgo degree. Now, a lot of this also is going to play into the Mercury retrograde because we are going to have Mercury going retrograde in a sign that is going to be relating to health. So as Mercury backtracks and starts slowing down, we are going to be reviewing, we're going to be bringing things up that we haven't seen, we're going to be getting hardcore factual evidence of things as well as we start to see trines to other planets in Earth signs. And on the 16th, we're going to be seeing then Mars coming into a trine with Uranus at 23. A lot of 23s, guys. There's a lot of 23s that are coming up, which on one hand, it gets me excited because I'm like, okay, like grab your popcorn. Like this is where like the show really begins. But this is like a fireworks show. You guys have all seen those videos, right? Of people lighting fireworks on their front yard, and there's just like a bunch of people in lawn chairs and they're letting like kids light them, and then they blow up and they spin everywhere and people are like, holy shit. And it's just a mess, right? That's kind of what this reminds me of with all these 23s. Let me read to you what 23 is about. So obviously my Nicola book, apparently these are pretty coveted. These are very hard to come by. So I'm hoping that they're going to be producing more of these. We'll see. All right, so let me read to you what Nicola says about 23 degrees. This is the degrees of Aquarius. So 11 and 23 degrees are Aquarian degrees. So we've got one here. Where's my marker? We've got one here, new moon, and this, all right? So Mars trine Uranus. Okay, so 23 degrees relates to astrology, astrologers, star charts, divorce, free relationship, common law marriage, separation, explosion, explosive device, missiles, bombs, loud noises, plane pilots or onboard, electricity, electricians, engineering, thunder, lightning, height jumps, high jumps, tall buildings, skyscrapers, rapidly, speed, promptly, racing cars, Formula One, ingeniousness, very intelligent, inventions, everything new, modern, latest styles, foreign body, organisms, everything. Couple words I can't say. I'm trying to think of unalived. Nervous tension, stress, something causing stress, sudden, fast interruptions, being torn, stressful, nervous, future to look ahead, right? So we've got Mars connected to the North Node, which is the self, right? Aries, the self, the body, heads, individuals, and then the trine to Uranus. I feel as if this is probably going to, at least in a physical, earthly manner, like we want to be watching for lightning, we want to be watching for storms, wildfires, electrical fires. This can definitely be a thing. But I also feel like this is where we're seeing action and mobility revolving around military, right? It can be revolving around also healthcare, starting to come together, and I wonder if it's going to be about like healthcare unions kind of meeting up. I don't know, we'll see. And anything in regards to like the industry taking action, right? Now, other than that particular transit, we are also going to be seeing that, like I said, that new moon is going to hang out at that degree, reverberating basically for a whole 28 days. So when we have a new moon cycle with the sun and the moon, which is subconscious and conscious coming together in an opening square to Uranus, it basically means that something is being lit up, like something just blows up. So it's going to be probably a whole month of exposure, realizing that there's rapid developments that are going on, especially revolving around these topics, okay? I think about some of the stuff that's been coming out recently about some of this alien exposure. I don't even really like talking about it because frankly, I think it's just bullshit. And a lot of us know that we're not the only ones out there, I think. I hope you share my same perspective on that. And when I say it's bullshit, it's not me saying aliens aren't real. I feel like my bigger concern is some of the stuff that's been coming out revolving around the fact that there has been secret operations and things that have been going on for decades about, UFOs and unidentified, flying objects. For those of they have a new name for it now. I don't even know what it's called, but there's another name. And what's concerning to me is some of these whistleblowers that have been coming forward, basically saying that they want to, come out with this information, but they feel like they still need protection because some of these particular groups that are out there that are reverse engineering alien craft are doing it basically as a part of like an agenda to like scare the masses into thinking that like aliens are here to like attack people. Anyway, if you guys want like a really good news source for this, I recommend going either on Rumble or you can go on YouTube and go and check out one of the latest videos from Redacted. They have a really great guy on there. I can't think of his name, but he's basically saying like, yes, aliens are real, but what's more concerning is that we come out and we start to remind everybody that it's not what it's being made out to be, and it's not this hostile situation where we need to fear that we're going to be attacked, because it's in a way being manipulated and staged for a global setup to make everybody think that there's an alien invasion, so we all just surrender our rights, okay? I guess that's just to put it very simply. And I know this sounds crazy. Aliens and extraterrestrial beings, or they also talk about interdimensional beings, really falls under Neptune, Pisces, other dimensions, okay? So we've got aliens that come from other places. Then they talk about interdimensional beings and space travel and like all kinds of crazy stuff that honestly is beyond me, and it's also beyond a lot of these congressmen and senators or whatever that they're talking to. But it's interesting because I do feel like it's starting to blow the lid off of, with Saturn and Neptune in this sign, the fact that like it's a whole conspiracy. Like it's like a whole setup that's like, okay, basically if it's the end of the world and we have no other way of being able to control the masses, at least we can pull the lever and we can, start telling everybody that we're under attack because we've reverse engineered some of these UFOs. I mean, it's like crazy to me. Anyway. So I would recommend going and listening to it because they're going to explain it way better than I can. But what this ties into for me is the fact that we are going to see with Mars at a Uranian degree and the trines to Uranus that there is action that is being taken essentially by certain forces or certain military branches revolving around this, and maybe there's going to be more. I'm not wild about the fact that it's, being put out now because I do feel like it's a distraction. I definitely know with planets in opposition to Neptune that there is going to be a push basically to distract people. So I do think the second half of August, that's something you want to watch for, even though I think it's good in a sense that we're finally just kind of like acknowledging the elephant in the room. I think that the timing is kind of strange, and I do feel like it could go hand in hand with some military mobilization and trying to get people distracted from what may potentially actually be going on out in the world, especially revolving around military action on or near water or coastlines. Also interesting hearing some like independent news coming out revolving around a video that was like circulating, I think it was like around TikTok, and I went and did some research on it, and there's some facts behind the fact that they are putting out the budget for 2024, at least here in the United States, and like significantly bulking up, which would seem to kind of signify, especially for like military stuff, that they're preparing for some kind of what would seem war. I'm not going to warmonger, but I think it's kind of hard not to imagine with the North Node being in Aries that at some point we are going to see some potential threat of that. And we know how the United States fares during wartime, that they make a significant amount of money, generally while they're, devastating other countries, unfortunately. So part of in my mind, I'm wondering, is this the beginning of what's going to be a pretty significant period where they're worrying people and putting out a lot of propaganda in regards to aliens or some new potential virus, as they're realizing that they're getting closer to 2024 and we're going to be having elections? Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I'm almost borderline convinced that we're not going to have an election. The more that I look at the US chart, the more that I look at some stuff that's going on, I wonder if that's part of the agenda, but I'll leave it at that. So watch for when Mars trines Uranus and Taurus, that there's probably going to be a sudden uptick in oh my gosh, this thing is happening. This is like changing, and it's going to be very rapid. On the 22nd, this is when we actually see Mercury begin its retrograde. And then on the same day, we'll see Venus square Uranus for the third time. Excuse me, Venus square Jupiter. Okay, so Mercury will start its retrograde at 21 degrees. So this will be on the 22nd. And obviously fell a little short, slowed down in conjunction with Mars. So we're going to start to see those two planets separate. So like that need to kind of want to correct people's vocabulary and, kind of be kind of nitpicky. It's going to calm down a little bit. Obviously, mercurial things are going to be in the skies. So communication breakdown, travel delays, changing schedules, information revolving around coworkers, health, all of that stuff. It's going to start kind of changing. The sun's at 29 degrees this day, and we've got Venus square Jupiter. Now that was happening towards, I believe, mid-June. Okay, so we're going to see 3 Venus square Jupiters. This was the first aspect that we saw actually in Venus's shadow for the retrograde. So Venus revolving around money, love, values, relationships, pleasure. Square to Jupiter means now we're reevaluating, have we spent too much? Did we have too much sugar? Is there too much changing in regards to growth when it comes to also the stock market? Definitely like June and July, like Venus square Jupiter, screaming highs, Venus square Uranus continue to go high. I'm wondering if the retrograde square to Uranus and then finally Jupiter is when things start to cool off. I have thought for some time that the retrograde was going to be a lot of ups and downs all summer long before we get to about September and shift hits the fan and people start to realize no, it's not actually as good as what the market would want you to believe. Watch for overdoing it, especially with communication or maybe being a little bit too overly optimistic when it comes to what is actually possible in relationships or in money. This is also about sharing ideas, I think. It can also be about, writing checks for things that we quite literally cannot cash. Remember, Venus is retrograde now, so it's going to be a little bit different. Now we're reflecting on, maybe we went a little too crazy with the spending over the summertime, maybe, especially overdoing it when it comes to, Leo can be going out to bars, going to clubs, going to parties, The squares to Jupiter can be, lavish spending when it comes to food, when it comes to travel. That can also be a theme. So some of us might really feel the crunch, actually, especially with the moon in Scorpio, the moon in opposition to Jupiter, square Venus. I think this is when a lot of people are looking at their credit card statements and they're like, what did I do? Why did I buy that? And really feeling that crunch. But look to mid-June to see the last time that happened. And then, like I said, also on this day, we're going to be seeing the Mercury retrograde, and we're starting to see Mars come into an opposition with Neptune. So that's something I'm kind of kicking myself. I feel like I should have gone more in depth into that, so I'm going to kind of touch on that now. And this is like kind of advanced, so stay with me here, but this is just how my mind works. So Mars opposes Neptune at 26 degrees, okay? So this is a Taurus degree, the third level of Taurus. So Mars is action and direction, right? The opposition to Neptune is something vanishes. It's like, where to go? So I do think that this is going to be about people taking action, looking into, what has happened with Neptunian things, where money, could be Mars, is being spent, and like where it's actually going, especially when it comes to, government budgets. This can be people taking action and looking into things revolving around viruses, Neptune, missing people, Neptune, things involving, people who are maybe like migrating and, entering or crossing borders illegally, and maybe some kind of like forces revolving around that. But it's still in regards to money. So I wonder if this is going to be about like human trafficking and like people that are being moved in between countries and like the money that's involved in that. But when you see Mars, which needs a purpose, especially in Virgo, it's like, okay, tell me exactly where I'm going and how to get there. And when it opposes Neptune, it gets lost. It's like a sense of like being intentionally sent in the wrong direction or misunderstanding and kind of getting lost in translation. The very same day, Mercury, which is the dispositor of Mars, also goes retrograde. So there's going to be, I'm assuming, some shit that's going to go down, especially financially, that people are going to be like, wait, what's going on over there? And you're not going to see it. So watch for some of the propaganda stuff that's going to be going on out in the world that's going to intentionally be a distraction from either money that's being transferred, some huge, wealth shift that's going on, something in regards to, trading. I anticipate it's going to be something like that. When does Mercury turn retrograde? So within hours. So the retrograde is going to start on the 23rd. I thought it was the 22nd. So it's going to start on the 23rd. I take that back. And right after Mars goes into opposition with Neptune. So something about the retrograde is going to be about, oh, we're sending money to this. Like, is this going to be like another Ukraine transfer? I mean, I can only speculate. I don't know. But something like that's going to happen. So I want you guys to pay attention. At the same time, the moon is going to oppose Uranus, so there is going to be something that's going to also seem like crisis related. Oh, we got to do something. There's this thing. We got to bail something out, whatever. But essentially, so much of the Mercury retrograde is also part of Mars in opposition to Neptune, which is about getting lost, revolving around what direction we're going in, what we're fighting for, what our purpose is, and dare I say, even a foreign war? I don't know. On the 23rd, Sun enters Virgo. So we move out of Leo season, we move into Virgo season. All the more reason to really be paying attention to the Mercury retrograde, because as we're going through Virgo season, we want to pay attention to what's going on with Mercury. And the moon is going to be in Scorpio when that ingress happens, and Mercury and Mars are in the same degree, pretty much in opposition to Neptune. So that's going to be more smoke and mirrors, distraction, stuff that's kind of going on out in the world. And we're starting to feel the buildup of Mars trine Pluto, which that's an interesting transit. That's pretty powerful. One thing I know I spoke about in the, in these transits was like okay, don't lose the faith, right? When Mars opposes Neptune, don't get distracted. Put your blinders on. Stay focused with being grounded. Stay focused with, what you're working on. Mars in Virgo for many people has been, I'm focusing on healthier habits. I'm not going to fall off because I get stressed out or I let the events of the world psych me out, or I'm not going to fall back into, hitting the snooze button or, drinking or, drug habits. That can definitely happen when you have so many planets in Virgo in opposition to both Saturn and Neptune. I think a lot of people are kind of at the point where they're taking matters into their own hands. We're now almost 3 years post-pandemic, or the beginning of the pandemic, and it's been really interesting to see. When it comes to society, there's like a split. There's people who want to continue to be scared and want to stay at home, and they're like waiting for like the next orders that they get from the news. And then there's the other people that are like, yeah, nobody's going to come and save us. Like, nobody's going to come and save us. Like, if we just continue to take handouts or support what originally seemed like free checks, and it seemed like people, taking care of us and looking out for us, has led to less jobs, more crime, a complete breakdown of society is what it seems, and people who are either, on substances and completely checked out or depressed, right? And so I, for one, have tried to go more in the direction of being like, I'm going to do something. Like, I'm going to stay more active. I know that it's so important to keep both my mind and my body sharp. And in all honesty, for me, it's been more the physical stuff, because if anything, I have too much time on my hands with this stuff. So I think a lot of like the trines that we're going to be seeing, to Uranus is about the ability to make change. And the trines to Pluto is how we feel empowered by taking action in regards to our health and our habits. And so for me, it's been a lot of like, okay, where is my food coming from? And you may not share some of the same perspectives as me, and like, that's totally okay. But I've been on this kick that's like, I want to know where my food's coming from. I want to know what's in it. I want to know that I'm eating whole foods and it's not stuff that's frozen or processed. I want to know the source that my food is coming from. I want to know how it was grown. And like, that may sound super crazy, but in my mind, I've already worked very hard over the last few years to make sure that I wasn't caving to other pressures out in society when it comes to making decisions about my health. And now I know that the next step is going to be now needing to do that and not falling for changes that are going to be happening with food production. So that's just me. And also wanting to kind of build up a pretty healthy arsenal and knowledge revolving around natural treatments, working with herbs, being able to eat more fermented foods, and also just getting in better shape and trying to kind of move my body more, because I'm working from a desk all of the time, And I'm somebody who, I have a fourth house, I have a second house stellium and I have a fourth house stellium. So I'm kind of like a Cancer Taurus. Probably my favorite thing to do would be like to have breakfast and go back to bed on Sundays. But what I have found is that I'm the most sharp and the most productive getting up, moving my body, getting sunshine, knowing where my food is coming from, and like grounding and taking time away from the static in the world. It helps me stay better connected to myself. It helps me make, I think, better decisions. And it's also helping me help other people. So don't buy into like all the bells and whistles. I would recommend, during this Mercury retrograde, find small tweaks and changes that you can make to your routine. If it's like, hey, I can only get up 15 minutes earlier, start there. And if that's taking the dog for a walk, taking a few minutes to meditate, spending a little extra time maybe on Saturday mornings, so you're meal planning and you're prepping some food for the week. If it's making the decision to go a little bit further out of your way to go to a farmer's market rather than going to like a local shop and, or big box store and, buying food that's pre-made or processed. Everybody's on their own leg of this health journey, right? Everybody. And my recommendation for you guys is, if you use this period with some of the trines to Jupiter, you're going to learn a lot more about your food. You're also going to learn a lot more about your finances. You're going to be able to get some of the stuff in better order. You might actually realize when you start to crunch the numbers and realize how much Postmates is actually costing you. how much energy it's taking you to, you know, go back and forth and pick up food every other day for dinner, or how much sodium might potentially be in something that you're ordering off of a takeout menu. And I do think it's going to help everybody be a little bit more so productive. Part of this process, I think, with all these planets in Virgo in opposition to Pisces, is realizing that nobody is going to come and save us. If we are leaving it up to, you know, those out in the world to protect us, to give us security, to tell us that, you know, they're here to basically usher in things to make us feel safe, it's going to come at a cost, right? At cost of your freedoms. So do something with this time. Look at where Virgo is in your chart. Know that there is a process that you're going through, but there's lots to gain with the trines to Jupiter, and an awareness of, okay, I can get back in my body. I can find simple ways to be able to feel safe and secure. Something that I've been like learning about is all the different ways that you can like work with the nervous system, and different like various grounding techniques. Something that I've actually really liked with, believe it or not, Jupiter and Uranus in conjunction. I've really started liking using a shake plate. I don't know if you guys know what those are, like a vibration plate. Mostly just for like sore muscles, but then the more I started looking into it, I was like, oh, it's actually a really great grounding technique, being on that thing for 15 minutes, helping you get back in your body. I don't know if you guys are interested in those, but I would look into it because I think it's been actually really helpful for me for like grounding. I don't know if that's the Uranus aspect, maybe. But I definitely have felt with some of these trines to both Jupiter and Uranus that just making some changes in regards to my food and my herbal supplements, and also just taking time to actually be out in the elements, it's like had a huge shift on me energetically. Mars trine Pluto is going to be about putting your actions in order and being able to see the power to change and transform. So I liken the Mars opposed Neptune as being like, well, why did this happen to me? Like, why is this, you know, falling apart? Who's there to save me? Or like, what is my purpose? Or why am I on my own? To me, that feels very kind of like victim-y, versus the Mars trine Pluto is about, you know, like empowerment. It's like, okay, you know, you can be the victim or you can take action. And that's probably what a lot of people are going to be really looking at the end of August, is which side of that spectrum do you want to identify with? We're going to see a number of aspects that are going to in conjunct and quincunx, both Chiron and Aries, which is going to bring up themes revolving around self-healing, but as well as the North Node. And you guys would know, those of you guys who have an Aries rising chart, you know, when you see planets go through your 6th house, this is where you're like, oh, okay, I have to like get in order and, you know, do things and cross off my to-do list. And the more that I'm making changes in this department, you know, the better I feel. Even though it's not really what I want to do, it's what I have to do. That's what this next month is going to kind of feel like. And I think the sun in Virgo is going to be nice. I do think that we really start to get the sweetness once again in that middle zone as we start to see, you know, trines to Jupiter and eventually trines also to Pluto. So thank Goddess that the retrograde is going to be happening in between Saturn and Neptune. We're not going to have too many aspects there. And then on the 27th, we're going to see the sun come into opposition with Saturn. That'll be at a 3. So it'll be 3 degrees early in the morning, but you'll feel that pretty much throughout the day. Yet another opposition to Saturn. We've seen several of them, Mars and Mercury, and then the sun. I do feel like this, for me, is more mental limitations. For some, it can be feeling blocks and like, you know, lower energy levels and not getting enough rest or not having enough clarity or having some kind of fogginess. And I definitely feel like the opposition to the sun is going to represent where if we lack belief, if we lack a vision, if we lack connection also with our higher selves, it's going to land us in a situation where it can impact our job, it can impact our health, it can impact our habits. So for many of us, I think it's going to be about like staying with it, right? And being consistent. And thankfully, when this opposition happens, we do have the moon that's picking up a trine to, the Sun and Mercury and eventually Mars. So we are going to have an Earth trine all day. So the way through this is actually saying, okay, there are times where we have to like show up and do the work, and there's times where we know that we need to kind of retreat and recuperate. And you're going to have to kind of figure out which side you're on there, because we can't really thoroughly get the job done, first of all, without having all the details, right? Mercury is retrograde, but also without having that vision. And whether it's a vision board, if it's, pictures for inspiration, if it's having something that's kind of spelled out so we know exactly what we're working towards. Work with the trine between the Moon and Mercury this day. And even though you're not always feeling the most productive, sometimes the best thing we can do is take a step back, right? I think Sun opposed Saturn in these signs is like, oh, we got to take a step back. We're not really making any headway right now. So let's just break. We'll come back to this tomorrow, which is so opposite of Saturn, right? So opposite of that Moon in Capricorn as well. But I think that's actually where we're going to get the most work done, is when we're recognizing that we're maybe doing too much. Very same day, Mars is going to move into Libra, which is pretty big news because this is a significant shift once again for the North Node. So Mars moves into the cardinal air sign of Libra. Technically, it is in its detriment because it is in the opposite of Aries. It's in a Venusian sign. So we've got the North Node ruler in Libra. Well, what can I say about this? I mean, essentially, it's going to be a really interesting fall, right? At least here in the Northern Hemisphere, as we see planets go through Libra and conjunct the South Node. It's a lessening of power. So at the end of this transit, we're going to see a square to Pluto and a conjunction to the South Node. So that may be the ultimate kind of like September, October, relationship breakdown, which I think inevitably will happen as Venus is leaving shadow. But this does seem to kind of signify that Venus is somehow involved in the Mars transit. And Venus is still retrograde. Now, by sign, they sextile each other. Venus will go direct, not too far off from when Mars makes its ingress. Those of you guys who are ruled by Mars, so like Aries and Scorpio risings, you're going to feel this a little bit more so strongly because that's your chart ruler. We're not going to see too many aspects, to be honest with you, because we're not going to see oppositions. We're not going to see too many squares up until the end. Maybe you guys are going to want to watch like lunar transits and when the moon is making aspects to Mars, but Mars is kind of a little bit in like no man's land until it gets into some of the later degrees. Mars in Libra has us taking action revolving around relationships, partnering with other people, initiating. And this can be good or bad. It can be where there's more friction in some relationships. It can be where we're also feeling like we need to be working as a team, like that two can actually be better than one. That generally is what Libra teaches us. I think Mars is going to have a little bit more power when we start to see, Venus that's going to be in better aspect, when it's direct maybe, and when it's no longer kind of in a square to some of these planets. So for the most part, you're not really going to see much. But still, nevertheless, 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, these are potent degrees. They do represent where the seasons kind of turn. So if you happen to be like a Libra rising, I think you're going to be feeling this pretty strongly, as will all of the early degree of the cardinal signs. But we're going to have some time, clear into, September and October before we see too much going on there. But it is in detriment. So that also means that there is like a weakening effect that we're going to have revolving around, Mars going through this sign. And so maybe when we start to see oppositions, it's going to be a little bit different. But right off the bat, I don't think we're going to feel too much that's going to be kind of going down. So I don't really have much to say on that. Maybe eventually down the road, towards the beginning of September, the in conjunct to Saturn. But yeah, not too much going on there. Just watch for more actions revolving around relationships. It can also be that there is more friction that's going on as well. The only other thing that we're going to be seeing is on the 28th, Uranus will go retrograde, and that's going to be in Taurus. And that will also be at 23 degrees. Okay. So later in the evening, Uranus goes retrograde. So for my Aquarius risings, because that is one of your co-rulers, you're going to feel that pretty strongly. And also if you have sun, moon, or rising in Taurus around 22 to 24 degrees, that retrograde you're going to be feeling pretty strongly as well. The retrograde's going to go for some months. Maybe I'll do something on that. I'm not really too sure, but we'll see. But essentially, you know, that retrograde, kind of funky, right? Because we're going to be having, you know, Mercury that's eventually going to come into a trine with that. Obviously, when we have the full moon that's going to be in Pisces, that's going to be going on. And Uranus at 23 degrees is when things get kind of weird. So we're going to start to see the effects of where this ramping up of technology and changes also that are going on with the planet, changes that are going to be going on with the financial systems is really kind of getting kicked into overdrive. I wonder if some of the trines is going to be about where they're trying to remedy things or rework things, or there's going to be an opportunity to see if some of these unions can actually come to some kind of agreement, perhaps. And when planets are retrograde, it's internal. So while Uranus is direct, it seems like things are a bit kind of changing and, you know, moving forward and kind of like overwhelming out in the world. This is going to be one of what will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets retrograde, and Jupiter will be joining soon as well. So things are really slowing down. With this many planets retrograde, we're really having to turn inward, perhaps reevaluating on some of the things that have been rapidly kind of growing or transforming in our lives, right? We're reevaluating what's happened since the Venus-Uranus squares. And then finally on the 30th, we're going to have a full moon. So this will be the second full moon that we're going to be having in Pisces. It's kind of funny how it just like bookends on both sides of the month, huh? Looks like that full moon's going to be at 7 degrees. Okay, conjunct Saturn. Woof. And 7 degrees is a degree that deals with relationships. I'm watching that Mars in conjunct Saturn. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some stuff going on there for sure, especially considering that's 8 signs away from Pisces. I wonder if this is going to be like secret things coming out in relationships and like, you know, what actions people are taking in relationships, or like what people are doing financially, or if they're financially separating or severing things or distancing themselves from people because of their involvement with things financially. But to have 2 moons, we had the new moon in Leo square Uranus, and then the full moon in Pisces conjunct Saturn. We got a lot of aspects with these moons involving outer planets. And so while Pisces is traditionally ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is actually getting ready to turn retrograde pretty soon, this is the planet, this is the degree which it'll retrograde at, 15 degrees. That's not quite stationing, but it's only going to stay there, and it's about halfway through that sign. And then also Neptune is retrograde. We'll take a look at this as we get a little bit closer, but just know that I think a full moon that's in conjunction to Saturn, especially in Pisces, feels like something's ending, like more so than usual with a full moon, right? Especially being in Pisces, which is the 12th sign of the zodiac, conjunct Saturn, which is about boundaries and limits. I think you're going to hear a lot about immigration. I think that you're also going to hear a lot about relationships ending and needing to end definitively. Because there's been misunderstandings, miscommunication, deception, and then Mercury in conjunct Chiron, and how that's impacting us on an individual level. And it's also where Venus is going to station. So beginning of September, we're going to see the Venus retrograde end. So Venus is at the 12 degrees it'll station. Jupiter's at the 12 degrees that it'll retrograde. So we've got some interesting stuff going on. Obviously, if you're a Pisces, sun, moon, or rising, anywhere around these particular degrees, let's say like 6, 7, 8 degrees of Pisces, it might be a little bit more action-oriented for you. I would imagine this is definitely going to be pretty significant for my Virgo and Pisces risings. A lot about like relational things. I talked a lot about that in the horoscopes, if you guys didn't catch that. I guess the silver lining here is that we're starting to finally come out of the Pluto square the nodes, so the pressure is releasing. And we also see that there is a sextile between Neptune, the co-ruler of this moon, to Pluto. So where something is ending, we're starting to kind of realize like, okay, things are being unveiled to us that's helping us really kind of make changes when it comes to, you know, our power, right? But yeah, I'm wondering if more secrets are going to be exposed revolving around this particular time. I think you're going to hear a lot more about some of this like alien related stuff. So we'll see. All right, so that's pretty much it for the month ahead. Obviously, check out those horoscopes if you guys want to know how it's impacting your rising sign. We will be here throughout this next month. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share. You guys can also support my work if you'd like by donating to my PayPal or joining my YouTube memberships. I have 3 different levels if you guys like my content. I'm also kind of maybe playing around with like Patreon. I don't know, people have asked about that. I've actually had one and just haven't used it. So I'm still curious to see if you would support me if I went on to Patreon. Perhaps maybe like trying to see, I have to look at some of this stuff, but if I were to create donation levels, maybe that was ad-free. So if you wanted to donate and watch my videos without ads, is that something you would participate in? Let me know below. Maybe I'll put like a poll on my community tab, so watch for that. If you like my content, right, and you want to support me, you can also join my live readings here on Friday nights. I'm always here at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We do either tarot or astrology. You can also book a session with me. I am booking now in September, so I'm booked out for about a month or so. But I do live sessions on Zoom, so you can book a session with me at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. If you check out my website, sign up for my newsletter so you're alerted as to when I have new stuff going on, when I have new classes. I'm thinking about doing some eclipse webinars in the fall, so if that's something you're interested in, make sure you sign up. Check out my shop while you're there. We have astrology calendars along with intention candles and all kinds of beginners tarot and astrology courses. I also have some one-off webinars there as well. And we are probably going to be having a sale on the Venus retrograde webinar. So if that's something that interests you, if you're still wanting to know what's going on with the Venus retrograde, you can check out my webinar while you're there. Hopefully it's a good month for everybody. I'd love to hear how you guys are feeling about this and maybe some of the crazy things that I've spoken about today. I'd love to hear your feedback. Leave me your comments below. Don't forget, sharing is caring. Share this with other people who would benefit from the information in regards to what's going on with the cosmos. Until next time, I will see all of you guys very soon. Enjoy the month of August. Take care.